Today we are working on properties of operations with integers. Our I can statement is I can use properties of operations to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. So we're going to start with just a review of all of the different rules for operating with positive and negative numbers. And then we will take a look into some longer types of problems to figure out where we can find some rules to help us solve longer problems with multiple integers. Okay, so let's start by just looking at some addition and subtraction problems here. So for adding, just a review of our rules. So if we have the same sign, that means we have two positives or we have two negatives, we're going to add our absolute values. So same sign, find the sum. We're going to add those absolute values, and then we're going to use the common sign. So if they're both positives, the answer is positive. If they're both negatives, the answer is negative. So let's take a look at these problems here. 5 plus 8, that's going to be 13. Two positive numbers, we're still adding them the way we always have. Here I have negative 2 plus negative 3. 2 plus 3 is going to be 5. And then that's going to be a negative 5 because I have two negative numbers. And then here it says think adding two descents. This is looking at like a scuba diving tank is what this is. Going down twice makes it even deeper. So adding two negatives together makes it even more negative. And then the same thing with positives. If you're adding two positives together going up towards the surface, it's going to be even higher. Okay, different signs. So if there's different signs here, we have to start by finding the difference. So we subtract. Let me fix that U here. Okay, so we subtract the absolute value, and then we use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So greater absolute value. That means the one you have more of. If you think about those integer chips, whatever you have more of, that's going to be your sign. So 5 plus negative 8. Different signs, find the difference. We're going to subtract. 8 minus 5 is 3. More negatives, answer's negative. So that one's going to be a negative 3. Here I have negative 2 plus positive 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. More positives, answer's positive, positive 1. And then here it says an ascent going up can partially cancel out or overcome a descent. So you're going different directions, you're going to end up needing to subtract. So those are original rules. Same sign, find the sum. Different signs, find the difference. Let's go and take a look at subtracting. Okay, so if we are subtracting, we're going to do boom, boom to change to the addition problem. Okay, so we're going to write change here. Whoa. Okay. So we change to an addition problem, and we do that with our boom, boom, change to addition, boom, change the sign, boom, boom. Okay, so how do we do that boom, boom method? We switch the operation to a plus while changing the sign of the second number to keep it equivalent. Okay, then we add those numbers using our addition rules. So really we're changing it to addition, and then we're adding using our addition rules, so these rules over here. Okay, so examples. 5 minus negative 8. So boom, change to addition, boom, change the sign, rewrite that problem. That now is a 5 plus a positive 8. That's going to give us an answer of 13. Negative 2 minus 3, we do boom, change to addition, boom, change the sign. That now becomes a negative 2 plus a negative 3. And that becomes a negative 5. Those are actually the subtraction problems turn into these addition problems that we saw in our first little box. Okay, and then here it says, remember, another great analogy for understanding integers is money. Think about adding and removing, so that'd be subtracting, credits and debts. Example, removing a debt, so subtracting a negative, removing the amount that you owe is a positive movement. That's a good thing, so take away a debt. Okay, so let's take a look at some multiplying and dividing. So multiplying and dividing, they have them in the same box here because the rules are the same. We multiply or divide normally, but if both signs match, the answer will be positive. I'm just going to put a plus here for positive. If they don't, then it will be negative. Same sign positive, different signs negative. So for example, I have -4 divided by +2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Different signs, answer is negative, so that's going to be a -2. Okay, over here, -5 minus, or I'm sorry, that's not a minus, that's a times. -5 times -8, same signs. Answer is going to be positive. 5 times 8 is 40, which means -5 times -8 is also going to be 40. And then here it says, think multiple descents of the same depth, of going down the same amount every time, is like repeatedly adding those negative movements. So 3 times -6 is the same thing as -6 times -6. -6 plus -6 plus -6. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try these 7 example problems on the side. Okay, let's check our answers. So first one, -4 plus -16, same signs, find the sum. 4 plus 16 is 20, and because they are both negatives, that's going to make it a -20. Here I have 9 plus -12, different signs, find the difference. 12 minus 9 is 3, more negatives, answer's -3. Over here, -24 divided by -3, same signs, answer's positive. That rule only applies for multiplication and division. -24 divided by -3, that's going to be a +8. And then for example 4, I have 15 times -3, different signs, answers negative. Again, that only works for multiplication and division. So 15 times 3 would be 45. Since I have different signs, that one's going to be a -45. All right, and then let's see, example 5. I've got some subtraction problems for these next ones. So we're going to start by rewriting it as addition, and then we'll write in our correct answer. So -17 minus 21. I do boom, change to addition, and boom, change the sign. I now have -17 plus a -21. Now, I've got 2-digit numbers here, so I'm going to actually go ahead and rewrite it vertically, just to keep myself organized. I've got same signs, 2 negatives now. I'm going to find the sum. 1 plus 7 is 8. 2 plus 1 is 3. Adding 2 negatives, my answer is going to be negative. So -38, that's my answer for this problem right here. All right, let's take a look at this next one. 4 minus -30. Boom, change to addition. Boom, change the sign. This now becomes this problem. 4 plus 30, and that's going to equal 34. All right, example 7, -35 minus -40. Boom, change to addition. Boom, change the sign. My new problem is going to be -35 plus a +40. Different signs, find the difference. If you want to, you can write it vertically. I'll go ahead and do it on this one. Remember, when you're taking a horizontal problem like this with 2 numbers and you're writing it vertically, you want to make sure that you've put the one with the greater absolute value on the top. All right, so 40 plus -35, that's like 40 minus 35. I need to borrow. That becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5, and 3 minus 3 is 0. I have more positives. My answer is going to be a +5. So that's going to be my answer for this problem. All right, so let's look at some that are a little more challenging. For our word problem here, it says Alicia withdrew $45 from her bank account. Later that day, she deposited $80, then wrote a check for $250. Last, she spent another $55 from the account while shopping with her direct debit card. What was her total gain or loss in funds for the account that day? Write an integer expression and then simplify. Okay, so we're going to go through and decide for each one if it's positive or negative before we write our problem. Okay, so withdrew $45. That's going to be a negative number because she's taking it out of the bank. I'm actually going to do it down here where I have a little more space. My math problem, negative 45. All right, later that day she deposited. Deposited means that she put it into the bank. So she has a check or some cash that she's putting into the bank. A deposit is a positive thing. That means putting money into the bank. She has $80 extra in the bank now. That's going to be a positive. Then she wrote a check for $250. That's spending money. Spending money is always going to be negative. So that one is a negative 250. So plus a negative 250. And then my last one is she spent. So again, spending money, that's going to be a negative there, negative 55. Okay, I'll erase that. It's a little sloppy so you can see it a little better. All right, let's try that again. Negative 55. Okay, so I can add in any order that I want to. And I know it's an addition problem. My key word here is total. Total means we're adding. Okay, so now I'm going to decide which order I want to add things in. It doesn't really matter. A lot of people like to group like signed numbers together, so I'm going to go ahead and use that strategy. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. I'm using the commutative property here to put numbers that are negative, the same signs together. And I'm just going to move that positive 80 to the end. Okay, so now I can add left to right if I want to, or I can do something different. I'll go ahead, I'll just do left to right. So negative 45 plus a negative 250, same sign, find the sum. Feel free to write them vertically if you need to. That's going to be a negative 295. Okay, now I've got to recopy all the rest of this problem. These long problems, it's really important to show all of your steps. Okay, so again, same signs. I'm going to find the sum. I didn't write it vertically on this one, but I will for this one just to show that strategy for people that like to see it. So negative 295. Okay, plus a negative 55. Remember, same signs. Find the sum. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry our 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. Plus 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. I'm adding two negatives. My answer is going to be negative 350. Okay. Now if I wanted to, I guess I could have done my negative 55 plus my negative 45 is 100 and then added that 100 onto 250. That might have been a good way to do it as well. Okay, so going back over to my original problem, negative 350 plus a positive 80. Here I have different signs, so I'm finding the difference. I'm actually subtracting. I'm going to go ahead and put this over here vertically as well. Okay, so this should be a plus sign. Different signs, find the difference. So I'm subtracting. 0 minus 0 is 0. Here I've got to borrow. That becomes a 2. This becomes a 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. 2 minus 0 is 2. More negatives, answer's negative. So her total answer, I'm going to write up here, negative $270. So she spent $270. My dollar sign there. Okay, so negative 270. I'm going to just rewrite my negative there to make it stand out a little bit more. All right. So over here now we have some problems with multiple numbers. Again, you can add and subtract. I'm sorry, not add and subtract. You can add or multiply in any order that you would like to. It doesn't really matter. So feel free to change the numbers order around if you'd like, or you can go and just do left, right. Either is fine. Okay, so I think I'm going to do left, right on this one. 3 plus negative 5. So different signs. I'm finding the difference there. 5 minus 3 is 2. Negative 2 would be my answer. There we go. Negative 2. And then I have a positive 8. Again, different signs. Find the difference. 8 minus 2 is 6. More positives. Answer is positive. So 6 is my final answer for this one. All right, here I've got negative 2 plus negative 5 plus negative 4. You can go in any order. I'm just going to go left to right here. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7. Remember, same signs, find the sum. Plus negative 4. Again, same sign, find the sum. Negative 11 is going to be my answer on that one. All right, and then for these ones, I have a lot of numbers that I need to multiply. It doesn't really matter what order you multiply in, but you just need to make sure that when you're multiplying, you're looking at 2 numbers at a time. You can't say, oh, they all have negatives, it's going to be positive, or some are negative, some are positive, so it's definitely going to be negative. You can only look at that same sign, positive, different signs, negatives, for 2 numbers at a time. All right, so I'm going to multiply negative 4 times 5. That's going to be negative 20. Times, and then I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Now I've got 2 negatives that I'm multiplying together. So now I have the same sign. My final answer is going to be positive. Negative 20 times negative 3 is going to give me a positive 60. All right, and I'm going to erase part of that because now I've covered up some of my problem for my next one. Okay, my last problem here on this page, I have 4 times negative 2 times negative 3 times negative 5 times 2. It's a little unusual that they have some dots that are time signs and parentheses that are time signs, but all of those things mean multiplication, and I can do them in any order that I want. Okay, so I'm going to start here. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Times, I'll go ahead and multiply these next two. Negative 3 times negative 5 would be a positive 15, same sign as positive, times this 2 at the end. Okay, so now I'm going to do this 15 times 2. I'm going to take my work out over here so we can actually see it a little bit better. I had this negative 8 in the front. And then this is 15 times 2. That's going to be 30. Now I have different signs. Answer is going to be negative 8. Negative 8 times 30 is going to give me a negative 240. For my final answer. And then here it says, note when multiplying or dividing 3 or more integers, if the number of negatives is even, your answer is going to be positive. But if your number of negatives is odd, it's going to be negative. That's what happened here. We had a total of 2 negatives. They canceled out, gave us a positive answer. Here we had a total of 3 negatives. So 2 of them canceled out, but then we had an extra one left over, and so our final answer is negative. That's not really a rule you need to memorize. It's just something that you can use to help check the sign on your answer, should you want to. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of our properties of operations here. So for operating with integers, we are using the same properties that we've used or that you have used when you were in elementary school and you first were learning about adding or multiplying with numbers. So we're going to start by just writing the name of the property under each one. So for our first one, can change the order of numbers when adding or multiplying. Okay, so can change the order, that is the commutative property. Change starts with the C. Commutative starts with the C. Some people like to think of it that way, or you can think about if you have parents that commute to the city for work, they're changing their place, they're changing their location to work. That's commutative property. All right, can add or move parentheses to group numbers in addition or multiplication problems. So adding in the parentheses, that add starts with the letter A, and a property also starts with the letter A, associative. So if you can add parentheses to group numbers, that's associative property. You can think about if you're associating with people, you're talking with them, you're in a group together with them. Can multiply a number in front of parentheses by everything inside the parentheses. That is the distributive property. We are actually not looking at the distributive property today, but I'm including it on our list of properties because it is one that will be very important for us a little bit later on in the year. And then our last one here, number times 1 or number plus 0 equals the original number. That's going to be the identity property. Those are all properties that you should have heard of before. We have a new one today that we're going to add to that list that you haven't heard before, and it's called the inverse property. And with addition, which is where we're going to look at our inverse property here, a number and its opposite. Actually, I'm going to change the word and to the word plus. It's a better way to describe it. So a number plus its opposite equals 0. Okay, so that would be like a positive 1 plus a negative 1 equals 0. And we looked at those with integer chips, and we called them zero pairs, and we've called them additive inverses before. The inverse property just means you can combine those additive inverses and it's going to equal 0. Inverse property does apply to multiplication as well. We will be looking at that in chapter 2. Okay, so for example 1, using properties to add multiple numbers. So here's where properties are helpful. I have the problem -5 plus 3 plus -8 plus 5. It's kind of a long problem. I can do it left to right. But if I see that there are additive inverses in my problem, then I can use those properties to help me cancel things out pretty quickly. So I'm noticing this -5 and +5 are opposites. They're additive inverses. So I'm going to rearrange the order of the numbers so that they're next to each other. -5 plus a +5. So that is the commutative property that we use there. So we use the commutative property to rewrite the problem, so additive inverses are next to each other. This -5 and this +5 equals 0. Okay, so that is the inverse property that I use to cancel out the inverses. Now I can ignore the 0 and I can add what I have left. So 3 plus -8, different signs, find the difference. 8 minus 3 is 5. more negatives, answer is negative. So my answer on that one is going to be -5. Okay, let's take a look at this next one. So I have -6 plus 4 plus -4 plus 7. So again, good idea if you've got multiple numbers, look to see if you have any inverses. Here I have 2 and they're already next to each other. So I don't need to use commutative to reorder them. I just need to use associative to group them. So I'm going to use associative property here. All right, so 4 plus -4, those are inverses that equal 0. Combining those inverses, that's the inverse property. Then I just take a look at what I have left. So I have -6 plus +7. That's going to give me a final answer of 1. Different signs, find the difference. More positives, answers positive. All right, let's take a look at ones that have addition and subtraction in them. So for this one here, I have 3 minus 6 plus -2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 2 plus, minus 3. Properties only work with addition or multiplication. They don't work with subtraction. So in order to use properties for subtraction problems like this, I need to change it to addition. Otherwise, I have to solve it left to right, which I certainly can do, but it takes longer that way. I don't want to do it that way. Okay, so I'm going to change it to addition. All right, so I'm going to do boom, boom. That's going to be a -6. And boom, yikes, boom. That's going to be -3. Okay, now I can look for some inverses. I'm going to use commutative property. I'm going to use commutative property to help combine my inverses, or line them up, I guess. I'm not going to combine them yet. So 3 and -3 are inverses. And then I have 2 and this -2. And then the other numbers in my problem are -6, 4, and 8. Then I'm going to use the associative property to group them since I have multiple pairs. So adding in parentheses, that's going to be the associative property. 3, -3, 2, -2. Okay, so combining those, that's going to give me a 0. All right, so then we use the inverse property there to make that 0 to combine our inverses. Okay, so now I'm going to look at what I have left. I have -6 plus +4 plus a +8. So you can add them in any order. You can do left to right. You can add the positives first. I think I'll just do left to right. So -6 plus +4 would be a -2. 6 minus 4 is 2. More negatives, answer is negative. And then 2 plus a +8. Again, different signs, find the difference. That answer is going to be 6. More positives, answer is positive. All right, let's do another one just like that. So here again, I've got some subtraction signs. I know they're subtraction signs because they're not parentheses around there to group them as negatives, but remember the negative and the subtraction, it really means the same thing. I want to use my properties because this is kind of a long problem. So I'm going to do addition. Got to change everything to addition. Okay. Boom, change to addition. Boom, change the sign. Boom, change to addition. Boom, change the sign. All right, so I've got my new addition problem. I'm going to rewrite them to put my same sign numbers together. I do not have any inverses in this problem. So I'm using commutative property, but this time instead of using commutative to put inverses together, I'm using commutative to put all the positives together and all of the negatives together. So I'm going to put my negatives first only because I can see down here that I have 3 lines that are going to be grouped together below. Doesn't really matter. Okay, -7, -4, and then my other negative is this -5. And then I have a +9, and I have a +3. Okay, so then I'm going to use associative property. I'm going to group together my positives and my negatives. So I changed the order, that was commutative, and now I'm adding parentheses, that's my associative. Okay, so now I'm ready to add. So -7 plus -4, same sign, find the sum, that's going to be -11. And then plus my -5, that's going to be, again, same sign, find the sum, -16. And then over here, 9 plus 3, that's going to be 12. And then different signs, find the difference, my answer will be -4. More negatives, answer's negative. All right, so take a look at this story problem. It says use the properties of operations to solve each real-world problem and then explain each step. So I have to do two things. I have to solve the problem, but then I also have to explain it. Okay, so Casey's bank statement was ripped as shown. What is the closing balance of Casey's bank statement? Closing balance means how much money was in the bank, was in your bank account at the end of that day or at the end of that time period. So opening balance was $0. Then a deposit is a positive. It's putting money into the bank. So positive 144. Withdrawal means taking money out of the bank. So that's a -80. Two more deposits, positive 25, positive 80, -$30. All right. So we're going to start by writing addition problem. So we'll write it out together, and then I'm going to have you pause it and try it on your own before I go through it with you. But we'll start by just writing it out together. So I'm going to write it over here. I'm going to write it in the order that they gave it to us. 144 plus -80 plus 25. Nope, I don't need a parenthesis there. It'd be okay if I put it there, I guess, but I don't really need it. Okay, plus a positive 25 plus a positive 80, and then I have a -30. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, add those numbers together. Okay, let's check your work. So most people do one of two things. They either group the inverses together and then add the rest of the numbers, or they grouped the same sign numbers together and then add the rest of the numbers. Occasionally you'll see someone go left or right, but it's very unusual. Okay, I like inverses, and I see I have inverses here, so I'm going to go ahead and just put those together. So I am going to do -80 plus a positive 80 plus 144 plus a 25 plus a -30. Okay, so that was the commutative property right there. Those two are going to equal 0. So I use my inverse property to cancel those out. So now I have the rest of these numbers. I'm going to add 144 plus 25 first. Multiple digit numbers, it's always a good idea to go off to the side and just line up those place values. Make sure you're adding or subtracting values correctly. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 plus 2 is 6. Bring down that 1. Okay, so I've got 169 plus a -30. Different signs, find the difference. Again, if you want to, you can come back over line it up. Minus 9 minus 0 is 9. 6 minus 0 is 3. Bring down my 1. So I have a positive $139. All right, so that's my work. Hopefully you got to the same number, even if you did a different strategy. And then you need to write an explanation of some sort about what you did. Okay, so for ours, I could write I used the commutative property to put inverses together. And used inverse property to cancel them. Then I added the rest of the numbers. Your explanation might be a little different depending on the strategies that you picked. All right, so let's take a look at our last problem here. A pilot took off and brought her airplane to an elevation of 15,000 feet. Over the next 2 hours, the pilot changed the elevation of her plane several times as listed in feet, and the numbers are there for you. What was the elevation of the plane after 2 hours? Go ahead and pause the video and try this problem. All right, let's check our answer. So we want to make sure we're using this number 15,000 feet because it's not asking about the change of the elevation. They're asking what was the actual elevation. So I need to make sure that I include that number 15,000 as part of my work. Okay, so for time's sake, I'm not going to write them out in order and then rewrite them. I'm just going to go ahead and use commutative property to put my inverses together. So negative 2,500. Negative is not very good. There we go. Plus a positive 2,500. Okay. Plus a positive 3,000. Plus a negative 3,000. Plus a negative 1,000. Then I'm going to use associative property. I'm going to group my inverses. So I'm just adding in some parentheses. These two will be 0. These two will be 0. So I'm left with this problem. 15,000 plus negative 1,000. That's going to equal 14,000. Story problems always need a label. On this one, looks like it is going to be feet. All right, and then for my explanation here, I used commutative to change the order. Associative to group inverses. and inverse property to cancel them out. Okay,